Smoke swallowed the horizon. The air shook with distant thunder. Not thunder from the sky, thunder from metal, from engines, from artillery pounding somewhere beyond the ridge. Men lay flat in the dirt. No one spoke. Boots pressed deeper into the frozen earth as another explosion rolled across the valley. Dust fell from helmets. Fingers tightened around rifles already slick with sweat. Someone whispered a prayer. Someone else laughed, a short, quiet sound that didn't sound like laughter at all. They had been told to hold. They had been told there would be support. But the radio was silent. The field ahead of them stretched open and empty. No cover, no retreat path, just wind moving through broken grass and the distant, growing sound of something coming closer. 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 A soldier checked his watch. Another man beside him removed a photograph from his pocket, looked at it once, and put it back without saying a word. No one asked what would happen next, because they already knew. The order had been clear. Hold the line. No matter what. A shadow appeared on the horizon. Then another. Then dozens. Engines, movement, shapes forming through the dust. Someone whispered, "They're not stopping." No one answered. Because by then, every man understood the truth. There would be no retreat. There would be no rescue. There would be no survival plan. Only time. And they were already running out of it. A final message crackled once through the radio, broken, incomplete, almost lost in static. Then silence. The wind stopped. The ground began to shake. And as the enemy advanced toward them, one terrible question settled over the line. If they already knew they were going to die, then why were they still holding their ground? The winter of 1944 was not just cold, it was desperate. Across Europe, the war had entered its final and most dangerous phase. Armies were exhausted. Supply lines were stretched thin. Entire divisions had been fighting without rest for months, moving forward through ruined cities and frozen countryside. But even as one side pushed forward, the other was preparing something unexpected. In the forests and valleys near the Western Front, a massive counteroffensive was being planned. It would be sudden, fast, and designed to break through the weakest points in the line. Those weak points existed for a reason. By late 1944, many experienced units had already been moved to critical areas. What remained in quieter sectors were smaller formations, understrength battalions, newly arrived troops, or units recovering from earlier battles. They were not expected to face a major attack. Their mission was simple: observe, report, and hold position if necessary. The region itself added to the danger. Dense forests limited visibility. Narrow roads slowed movement. Hills and valleys blocked communication signals. In winter conditions, reinforcements could take hours, sometimes days, to arrive. And winter came early that year. Snow hardened the ground, ice covered the roads, engines failed, radios struggled, supply trucks broke down before reaching their destinations. Yet despite the conditions, command believed the sector was quiet. Too quiet for a large operation. Too quiet for concern. But intelligence warnings had begun to appear. Strange troop movement reported by reconnaissance aircraft. Increased radio traffic detected across enemy lines. Unusual silence from positions that had previously been active. Some officers raised concerns. Others believed it was routine rotation, normal repositioning, or even deliberate deception meant to draw attention away from other areas. After years of war, uncertainty had become normal. Every report carried doubt. Every warning competed with dozens of others. And resources were limited. The line could not be strengthened everywhere. So decisions were made. Some sectors would receive reinforcements. Others would wait. The quiet forest region was one of those that waited. The units stationed there were given standard defensive orders: maintain observation, report unusual activity, avoid unnecessary movement. Most of the men believed their position was temporary. A holding assignment. A rest sector. A place where the war moved slowly. They built small shelters, reinforced foxholes, established routine patrols through the trees. Nights were cold but quiet. Days passed without major incidents. Letters were written home. Rations were shared. Some soldiers even spoke about the possibility that the war might end before their unit saw heavy combat again. Command reports continued to describe the area as stable. Low risk. Minimal activity. But stability in war can be dangerous, because sometimes the quiet does not mean safety. Sometimes it means preparation. And deep beyond the forests, beyond the hills, and beyond the frozen roads, something was already moving. Something large. Something fast. Something that would arrive without warning. Inside the frozen sector, the men of the defensive line lived by routine. Routine was survival. Wake before dawn. Check weapons, clear frost from rifle barrels, heat water if fuel was available, eat quickly, rotate observation posts, patrol assigned sectors, report anything unusual. Then wait. Waiting became the longest part of every day. The unit holding this section of the line was not elite, but it was disciplined. Many of the soldiers had already seen combat elsewhere. Others were replacements, trained quickly and sent forward to fill empty spaces. They came from different towns, different backgrounds, and different ages. Some were barely out of training. Others had been fighting for years. What they shared was exhaustion. Months of movement, long nights, constant uncertainty. Their officers understood this. Orders were strict but simple. No unnecessary risks. No wasted ammunition. No abandoned positions. Every movement logged. Every sound reported. The defensive line itself was thin. Foxholes spaced across open ground. Machine gun positions placed to cover likely approaches. Communication trenches dug where the frozen earth allowed it. Telephone lines connected command posts to forward positions. Each man knew his sector. Each man knew that if something happened, he might be fighting alone for several minutes before help could reach him. At night, the cold was the real enemy. Temperatures dropped low enough to freeze water bottles solid. Gloves stiffened. Boots hardened. Sleep came in short shifts, interrupted by sentry duty and the constant need to keep warm. Despite the conditions, small routines helped maintain morale. Someone always brewed coffee when possible. Someone always shared extra cigarettes. Someone always told the same stories about home. Letters were read quietly, often more than once. Some men carried photographs. Others carried small religious items. A few carried nothing at all. The officers walked the line regularly, speaking to soldiers by name when they could. They reminded them of defensive plans, reinforced positions, checked fields of fire. Training never stopped. Even in quiet sectors, drills were conducted. Rapid response, ammunition distribution, communication checks, withdrawal routes, though rarely discussed openly. Because withdrawal was not expected, the official order for the unit was clear. Hold position. Delay any enemy advance. Maintain the line until reinforced. That phrase, "until reinforced," was repeated often. It gave the men something to believe in. Support would come. Artillery would respond. Reserves would arrive. The line would not be abandoned. But beneath the routine, there was an unspoken understanding. They were lightly equipped. They were spread thin. And if a large force came through the forest, the time between first contact and full engagement would be very short. Still, discipline held. Positions were maintained. Weapons were cleaned. Ammunition was stacked carefully beside each fighting position. Every man knew exactly where to go if the alarm sounded. Because in quiet sectors, the greatest danger was not constant attack. The greatest danger was the moment when the quiet ended. And when it did, there would be no time to prepare. The first sign was not an attack. It was silence. Patrols moving through the forest began reporting something unusual. Areas that normally showed signs of movement, distant engines, scattered voices, occasional rifle fire, had become completely still. Too still. One patrol reported fresh tracks in the snow, not scattered, not random. Organized. Heading in multiple directions. The report was filed. Marked for review. No immediate action taken. Another patrol returned early saying they heard engines somewhere beyond the trees, not trucks, heavier, slower. Then the sound stopped. Command requested confirmation. No second patrol heard the same thing. The report was noted, but not escalated. Radio operators also noticed changes. Enemy transmissions had increased briefly over several nights, then suddenly dropped. Complete radio silence. Some interpreted this as a reduction in activity. Others found it more concerning. Meanwhile, supply deliveries began arriving late. Road conditions were blamed. Weather reports mentioned ice and blocked routes. But drivers also reported increased movement on distant roads at night, vehicles without lights, moving slowly through forest routes. Forward observers began requesting additional artillery registration, just in case. The requests were acknowledged, but no additional ammunition was sent. Then came the final warning. A listening post reported faint mechanical noise just before dawn, low, continuous, like engines running at idle. The sound lasted several minutes, then stopped. The officer on duty requested permission to increase patrols. The response from higher command was cautious. Maintain current posture. Avoid unnecessary exposure. Continue observation. Because the sector was still considered quiet, still considered low risk, still considered unlikely to face a major operation. Yet among the men, the mood had begun to change. They spoke less at night. They checked weapons more often. Machine gun crews adjusted their firing arcs without being told. Ammunition boxes were opened and restacked for faster access. One soldier wrote a longer letter home than usual. Another stopped writing entirely. The forest itself seemed different. No distant movement. No scattered sounds. Even the wind felt heavier. Then one morning, the field telephone went dead. The line was inspected. Good. Not by weather. Not by accident. By something or someone moving closer than anyone had expected. And still no attack came. Only silence. The kind of silence that doesn't mean nothing is happening. The kind that means everything is about to. The morning was colder than usual. Frost clung to every branch, every helmet, every rifle barrel. The sky was a pale, washed-out gray, and the men could see their breaths in the air. Then it began. At first it was subtle, a distant rumble like heavy machinery moving over frozen earth. The ground vibrated faintly beneath their boots. The wind carried a metallic tang, not smoke, not blood, but something sharp, almost electrical. Machine gun crews tightened their grips. Officers scanned the tree line. Radio operators attempted contact with headquarters. Nothing. Static. Silence. The rumble grew louder. Shapes appeared in the fog and snow, too far to make out details. Shadows moving together, moving fast, movement where there should have been none. A soldier whispered, "It's them." But there was no time for fear. The first explosion, not massive, just a shockwave, rattled the foxholes. Dirt and snow sprayed into the air. Soldiers ducked instinctively. Helmets clanged. Rifles shook. Orders were shouted, short, sharp, incomprehensible over the roar of engines and distant crashes. Confusion spread faster than fear. Some men froze. Some ran to their positions. Others simply crouched, gripping their weapons, eyes wide. The forest itself seemed alive. Trees swayed though there was no wind. Branches cracked in impossible sequences. Dust and frost fell like rain. Shadows darted between trunks, always at the edge of vision, always moving faster than any human could. One soldier tried to fire. The rifle jammed. Another tried to speak on the radio, static. Nothing. Men began disappearing. Not a scream, not a shout, just gone. One moment present, the next, empty space where they had stood. The soldiers could only watch in disbelief as the shadows swallowed them. Chaos reigned. No strategy, no command, only instinct, survive. The rumble became a roar. Shapes emerged fully now, massive, mechanical, or something worse. Men fired blindly, shouting to one another, trying to regroup, but regrouping was impossible. The last thing many saw was a flash of light or a blur moving past them. One by one, positions emptied. Officers fell silent. Guns were abandoned. Even the forest itself seemed to close in. Then silence. No explosions, no shouting, no footsteps, just wind over snow. No one moved, nothing moved. When the command post attempted to radio forward units, there was nothing. No replies, no gunfire, no bodies, no tracks, not even footprints in the snow. It was as if the men had simply vanished. And somewhere in that quiet, a single question echoed over the frost. How can a battle be fought by men who are no longer there? The reports came slowly. At first they seemed routine. Patrols checking positions, officers inspecting empty foxholes, scattered equipment left behind. But as the hours passed, a grim realization began to form. Entire sections of the line were empty. Not a single man remained. Ammunition boxes were untouched. Rifles leaned against walls. Helmets sat as if waiting for their owners to return. And yet, the men were gone. Command sent search teams immediately. Units moved through the forest, shouting names, calling signals, following tracks. Nothing. Snow crunched beneath boots, but it led nowhere. Paths twisted unnaturally. Tracks ended abruptly. Radios attempted to reach the missing soldiers. Silence. Only static. Officers documented every detail. Reports were filed with timestamps, coordinates, witness statements, but contradictions piled up. One report claimed a firefight had been heard in the eastern sector. Another confirmed silence. Patrols reported glimpsing shadows between trees but could not identify shapes. Higher command demanded explanations. Reconnaissance aircraft flew over the region. Low visibility prevented confirmation. No bodies, no signs of battle, only the frozen ground and abandoned positions. Interrogations of nearby units added more confusion. Some heard noises that shouldn't exist. Engines in the distance, yet roads showed no tire marks. Civilians near the area reported nothing unusual, yet local maps indicated movements inconsistent with normal patrols. Documents later classified as restricted hinted at discrepancies in the official narrative. Orders had been issued to erase certain logs. Witnesses who survived questioned the timing of events, why the line had not been reinforced, why communications were blocked. Some were quietly reassigned. Others were silenced by circumstance or perhaps fear. Even now, decades later, investigators remain puzzled. Reports that should have clarified the incident instead deepened the mystery. No official explanation fully accounts for the sudden disappearance. The forest kept its secrets. The frozen fields, the empty trenches, the abandoned weapons, all were reminders that something inexplicable had occurred, something that could not be recorded, captured, or fully explained. And above it all hung the unnerving question: what could cause trained, disciplined men to vanish without a trace? Over the years, historians, military analysts, and conspiracy theorists have proposed several explanations. Each theory adds layers of intrigue and doubt. Some argue that an elite, unknown enemy unit executed a highly coordinated assault. Orders to erase records were allegedly issued to conceal intelligence failures. Yet no bodies, no equipment, no damage to terrain supports this. Could an enemy simply remove 100 men without leaving trace? Doubt persists. Classified files hint at testing of experimental machinery, possibly advanced vehicles or weaponry. Some suggest the men were caught in a field test gone wrong. Witnesses describe strange lights and unusual sounds that day, but official evidence is missing, erased, or marked top secret. No document confirms the technology even existed. Psychologists propose that extreme fear, combined with isolation, cold, and stress, could have caused a mass dissociation, men fleeing invisibly, disoriented. Yet this fails to explain the absence of tracks, equipment, or bodies. How could hundreds simply vanish without leaving physical evidence? Some researchers suggest rare natural phenomena, magnetic anomalies, sudden fog, or topographical distortions, might have displaced the men temporarily or even permanently. But no later studies have replicated such conditions, and the frozen forest remains unchanged, hiding the truth. Every theory has a flaw. Every report has a contradiction. Some files were destroyed, witnesses were silenced, and memories fade with time. Nothing fully accounts for the event. And so the story persists, half recorded, half imagined, entirely disturbing. Questions linger at the edge of every analysis. What really happened that morning? We may never know. The forest returned to quiet. Seasons passed. Snow melted, rivers swelled, and the world moved on. Yet the memory of that morning never faded. Command never released a full report. Records disappeared. Soldiers who survived avoided the subject, and the men were never seen again. Perhaps the truth was too dangerous. Perhaps it was too humiliating. Or perhaps the world simply isn't ready to know what occurred in that frozen valley. All that remains are empty foxholes, abandoned weapons, and the unsettling thought that trained, disciplined men prepared to face death vanished without a trace. So we ask one final question. If men who had already accepted death could disappear like shadows, what else is possible? The forest holds its secret, and the secret remains unresolved. Share your theories below.